The Atlanta Braves dropped the series finale to the Philadelphia Phillies 2-1. And stop me if you've heard this before, but the offense was a problem. Let's talk about it.
This is the Braves Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Atlanta Braves. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to the Braves Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. That is Jake Mastroianni, host of Locked On Braves. Catch him on social media at shortstopball. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Tons of content coming from last week, from this week, all about what this team did. And what they did today, Jake, 2-1 loss to the Philadelphia Phillies. So they dropped the series, last game in the month of June. But Spencer Strider pitched well, albeit without strikeouts. Dylan Lee got out of a great jam. But we've got to start with the offense because the Braves have 6 hits in this one, but the only one for extra bases, and ultimately the only run, comes from a Sean Murphy solo shot in the second. And Atlanta goes 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position because they just couldn't even get guys off of first base, it felt like, the entirety of the game.
Yeah, look, same story, right? It's just this offense. Look, and to the credit of the Phillies and Ranger Suarez, he's a good pitcher. He's been on a complete run here lately, but he was battling with command. They were talking about on the broadcast. You could see that he was a little bit off, and yet they were just letting him get away with it. You know, he threw a lot of pitches earlier. He was trying to battle it, and you had some base runners. You weren't taking advantage of the mistakes. And look, Braves pitcher Spencer Strider, he didn't make a ton of mistakes today, but when he did, Phillies made him pay for it in that inning where they scored a couple of runs, played some good baseball too, some fundamental baseball, a sac bunt and a sac fly.
I knew the bunt was going to come up from you, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, look, their offense hasn't been great outside of obviously putting up 13 runs on Friday. They scored 1 run in their series against the Astros. They didn't score. They scored 1 run on Saturday. They only scored 2 runs today. Their offense hasn't been doing well either. But they found ways to take advantage of the few mistakes that Braves pitchers made. They found a way to manufacture the game-winning run. What did the Braves do? They got a solo shot and nothing else. You got 1 at bat with the runner in scoring position. And it's really, really frustrating. I know I've said that word over 1 million times already this season, but
yeah,
you know, just to see this offense and just the inability to try to force something, to do anything for 7 innings against Ranger Suarez outside of a solo shot. It's just, this was supposed to, and we got to quit saying it at this point. This is one of those games where you just watch it and you just think, okay, this team just is bad. These hitters are just bad, because you watch some of these at bats in this game. And I mentioned it yesterday. We really harped on Michael Harris a lot, and he's gotten benched, so you can't blame him anymore. But Ozzie has been absolutely dreadful. Now, he did get the hit of the 9th inning to at least, you know, get the tying run on base. The bats from Riley and Ozuna that you're seeing right now, I mean, Ozuna in this game was over 4 with 4 strikeouts, 2 of them looking, and that just seems like it's happening a lot here lately. It's bad at bats up and down the lineup. I mean, some of your better at bats are coming from the guys at the bottom of the order right now. And it's just completely frustrating because it's not the offense we expected to get, and to get such a good performance by Strider and to lose this game, another 1-run game like this, because your offense just completely disappears. It's just frustrating.
Yeah. The Marcell Ozuna strikeout to end the 3rd inning. Like, I know that, yes, Ronald didn't do anything. Matt Olson struck out in front of him too, but Ozuna goes down on 4 pitches, 3 strikes looking, and he takes a changeup for a ball. And that's kind of been emblematic of what's going on with this team recently. I touched on this last night too, right? We talk so much about, you mentioned Michael Harris has gotten a lot of the hate recently, but when your 3, 4, and 5 hitters aren't doing much, it's really hard to get too mad at your now benched center fielder when the other guys are not doing a lot right now. And in the month of June, they've not been doing much. I pulled this before the 9th inning, so I don't know if this is still correct, but based on what they did in the 9th, I believe it is. Nick Allen has a higher OPS in the month of June than either Ozuna, Riley, or Ozzie. Nick Allen has a 673 OPS. Ozuna's at 639. Riley's at 588. Ozzie's at 570. So I am agreeing with you. This team is, at this point, it's hard to say they're anything but bad. Now, is it fixable? That's the much bigger question. That's what I'm going to be diving into on the newsletter. You're going to dive into on Locked On Braves, just trying to figure out what can you do to fix this. But it's very clear from today that this team is not very good as currently constructed, as currently playing, even though these guys have been in the past. And I've said it over and over again. I don't know what you do at this point. You've started to do some of the benching guys. Harris was benched. You get Profar back for your next game, but outside of that, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, and just kind of a tease too is one of the podcasts I'm going to do early this week. It's time for some radical changes. You're at the midway point. We just passed the midway point of the year. The guys that we've been waiting to turn things around haven't turned things around. And you got Profar coming back. I just think it's a good opportunity to maybe make some radical changes. So we'll talk more about that on the podcast because, again, as we've said, there's not a lot of options, but at some point, I think you just got to try those options and see what you can do, whether it is, Eli White getting more time or Fairchild or calling up a Carlos Rodriguez or Nacho, hopefully, if he's healthy. Like, I think at some point, even if you aren't fully convinced that the other options are better, it's got to be better than Michael Harris, who's one of the worst hitters in baseball. It's got to be better than Ozzie, who's been one of the worst hitters in baseball. You got to try something. And again, we harped a lot on those two guys in particular, but you mentioned it too. Just looking at the last 30 days for this team, Acuna at 1130 OPS, Olsen 931, nobody else over 750. And then it's Stuart Fairchild at a 750 OPS, Drake Baldwin at a 726. But then you got Austin Riley, 682 OPS over the last 30 days. Marcell Ozuna, 566 OPS over the last 30 days. Ozzie Albies, 519. Alex Verdugo, 480. Michael Harris, 472. These are all starters in your Atlanta Braves lineup, and a lot of them hitting in very prominent places in the lineup. And it's not that you're going to have some bad months, but you can't have 500, 600 OPS months from guys in the middle of your order. And you have multiple guys with 600 or lower OPSs for a full month that are supposed to be big contributors for you. And you just can't overcome that. I don't care if Acuna has an 1100 OPS, Matt Olson has a 930 OPS. You cannot overcome that when everybody else isn't just having an off month. They're all having a terrible month. You just can't overcome.
It's somebody gave me, it's actually kind of a clunky war analogy, but it's like you can't win a battle when 4 of your 6 aircraft carriers are taking on water and can't even defend themselves. And it's kind of like you feel like that's where they are. It doesn't matter what the rotation does. It doesn't matter what the bottom of the order does. When those guys are hitting like that, that's it. That's the entirety of the game there. All right. I do want to talk about that rotation, though. I do want to talk about Spencer Strider today. It felt like I'm trying to figure out how much of this was him doing something else, how much was Philly having a great game plan. We'll talk about that next, right here on the Braves Postcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. Because if you're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you have a bad feeling about, say, Atlanta's rotation for the next series against the Angels, you can go in there and put your money on what you think is going to happen. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Maybe wait for the Bryce Elder start. But open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back to the Braves Postcast. Thank you to everybody who's here. I know this team isn't as a ton of fun to watch right now, but we're still glad you guys are here with us. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. Jake teased a really fun episode coming this week. But I want to talk about Spencer Strider. 7 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks to 4 strikeouts. He gives up 8 hard hit balls, and it's a low strikeout total from Strider. You kind of go back, he only gets 10 whiffs in this one and a 22% CSW. Trying to figure out, was he more open to pitching to contact and letting guys put the ball in play? Or did Philly just have a really good game plan against him, as they seem to almost always do when they face Strider?
Yeah, Philly's obviously very comfortable with Strider. Now, in the regular season, he has dominated them for the most part, but 2 starts against him this year, he's taken losses. Obviously, this was a very tough one. I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's look, we're still dealing with a lessened version of Spencer Strider.
Yeah.
Fastball topped out at 97.5 today. And I think he's just learning how to pitch with this mix and being comfortable pitching to contact. He got a lot of ground balls in the game today, got a lot of weak contact. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a Spencer Strider who knows he doesn't have that dominant fastball at the moment, but it's a Spencer Strider that's a little bit more comfortable with pitching to contact, getting some of that weak contact, 88.5 mile per hour average X velocity again. So like I said, a lot of weak stuff in there. I mean, the sliders, obviously, we talked about this last start. It's for the first time in a while. I feel like he really didn't have the slider, and he still was able to do some good things with just that fastball. This one, I thought he did have that good slider again, and we saw a good performance from him. And again, it was really, he ran into that trouble in the first inning, got out of that, and really that inning, and then the inning he gave up the 2 runs in the 5th. I mean, he was really, really good and really efficient. So I think it's Spencer Strider learning how to get by with what he has. And I'm still hopeful that the 97, 98s, 99s are going to come back, as he gets stronger and gets further removed from the injury. But I think right now he understands I don't have that. So I have to pitch based on location and getting some weak contact and keeping hitters off balance. But just 2, I guess he threw the curveball a little bit. He actually got 2 whiffs on 4 swings against 11 curveballs today. He only threw the changeup once, but mainly just the 2 pitches. And so I think that's just really where Strider is right now. He's just becoming more comfortable and realizing how to pitch with what he has available.
Yeah. And it felt like the issue that he ultimately had when I was watching was he couldn't pair the slider off of the fastball because they just weren't missing the fastball. And he throws the fastball. His goal is to throw it in the zone enough to get you to then pull the trigger on a slider out of the zone. He was out of the zone plenty with the slider. They swung, they didn't chase it a ton. And when they did chase it, they hit it a lot. But in the zone, they hit 96% of the 14 fastballs they swung at. Yeah. They whipped one
just
time.
Can't blow it by people anymore.
Exactly. And the locations weren't quite good enough. I do feel like him bringing it down a little bit in the zone helped with some of those ground balls. Maybe they're still used to getting that pitch up. So they were, they were on top of it. But that's kind of the issue there. We saw Dylan Lee, I'm not going to say struggle for the first time in a while, but maybe look human for the first time in a while. He goes in for the 8th inning, single, double, runners on 2nd and 3rd. But I'm really impressed with this point on. And this goes to, I think you mentioned this yesterday, about how they used him in the most important part of the game. They didn't hold him till the 9th. But he gets Castellanos to strike out. He gets Kepler to fly out, Real Muto to ground out. I thought it was just another sign that Dylan Lee is the best reliever on this team. And next time you get into a save situation, Dylan Lee feels like the guy they're going to go to for that. But they used him right here, and he worked his way out of a jam of his own fault.
Yeah, I mean, huge credit to Snicker here. And I'd have said the same thing, even if Lee had given up a run or 2 there. I think you got the top of the order coming up in a 1-run game. You got an off day tomorrow. You go to whoever you feel like is your best reliever. And right now it feels like Dylan Lee is your best reliever. And also, don't you want to see that other guy who's potentially going to be a closer? You get some traffic and your stuff's good enough that you can pitch out of that. So again, would rather just been a 3-3 down inning, no stress in there, but to be able to see him, get in that spot, 2nd and 3rd, no out, very Braves type thing to do here offensively, but you don't get a run out of it. But it's great pitching when we do it. So yeah, good job by Dylan Lee there, and a great call by Snicker going to your best reliever in a 1-run game with the top of the order coming up, even if it's just the 8th inning.
Raisel Iglesias has a clean 9th. And for those of you keeping score at home, Isabel Hernandez pitches a clean inning of relief in Gwinnett, the 7th inning, 1 strikeout, no hits allowed in rehab. So he might be back sooner rather than later. So again, Braves lose the finale 2-1 to the Philadelphia Phillies, drop the series. Next game they play is Tuesday, July 1st. Should be when they get Jurickson Profar back. So I'm hoping to see a lot of roster moves when they do that. But the pitching matchups, Tyler Anderson versus Didier Fuentes on Tuesday, Yusei Kikuchi versus Grant Holmes on Wednesday, and Jose Soriano versus Bryce Elder on Thursday. I know you'll be talking about this matchup versus the Angels and everything, but first thoughts, how do you feel about that grouping of pitching matchup?
You need your offense. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is you got, Fuentes. Holmes, I feel pretty decent about.
Yeah.
But he's going up against Kikuchi, who when he's on, he can be a really good pitcher. So that's going to be a tough matchup. And then you got Elder, who, ever since they sent him down, he had that good stretch. They sent him down to come back. He's had one good start really since coming back. So it's been a struggle for him. And I don't have a lot of confidence in at least two of those guys right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am as well. This has been the Braves Postcast for Sunday, June 29th. Again, 2-1 loss by the Braves to the Philadelphia Phillies. Do us a favor, if you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to both Locked On Braves and Locked On Sports Atlanta. You get Jake's upcoming show on the major changes needed. You get all of our content about the Hawks, the Falcons, everything else. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Lindsay Crosby. This has been the Braves Postcast.